Good morning. Welcome everyone to the Massey Romans Capital webinar, where we're hosting Seth Rosenthal from Academy Securities, as well as Major General Spider Marks. I did a little joke earlier, so we're trying to do the same joke twice. But now that the election's over and everybody was awake, probably late last night. Thanks for tuning in today. And I think we have a pretty good crowd. So, for those on the call that I have not met, my name is Paul Massey. I'm a certified financial planner. I've been managing client portfolios for the last 26 years. And my partner, Bill Romans, and I created Massey Romans Wealth Management in 2000. 2 years ago, we renamed our team Massey Romans Capital and simultaneously joined a successful RIA in Cincinnati, Ohio, Formidable Asset Management. This partnership has been great. We truly enjoy working with this team, so we feel very fortunate there. And over the last several months, the top questions that we've been asked from clients is really concerning the election, inflation, interest rates, and geopolitics. And as of yesterday, the U.S. presidential election is now over. On Thursday, we're going to get an update from Chairman Jerome Powell on inflation and interest rates. And then the last question was geopolitics. So today, one of the most knowledgeable people in the world on this subject is going to be with us, giving us his perspective, and that's Major General Spider Marks. And kind of before we get into a little deeper, I want to give you a little background of how this got started. Maybe about a year ago, Bill and I were researching impact investing, and we came across Academy Securities, where we became very interested in their Veterans Impact ETF and the research group, the Global Intelligence Group. So the ETF primarily invests in loans to U.S. service members, military veterans, their survivors, and veteran-owned businesses. The Geopolitical Intelligence Group consists of retired admirals and generals who have commanded military units across combat, cyber, and intelligence specialties across the globe. This group publishes monthly and event-related reports that we found extremely useful in reading and learning. This group is headed by our second speaker today, Major General Spider Marks. So our first speaker today is going to be Seth Rosenthal. He's going to give us a brief intro to Academy Securities as well as the Impact ETF BETS, BETZ. This morning, Seth rang the bell in the New York Stock Exchange, so that's kind of exciting. So we can, I guess, attribute the big up day in the markets today to Seth. Appreciate it, Seth. So Seth has 25 years of experience. He's the Chief Investment Officer at Academy. Seth was previously the bank's Chief Investment Officer at Northern Trust. In his 16 years at Northern Trust, he saw over $100 billion in global fixed income and money market assets across a wide range of duration and credit mandates. Prior to Northern Trust, Seth spent 10 years at Bank of Montreal, holding various roles in treasury and credit analytics. He was CFA and graduated from the University of Iowa. So Seth, if you want to give us a little rundown, we'd appreciate it.
Great. Thanks, Paul. Appreciate the intro and welcome everyone on a post-election day. Just a quick note on Academy Asset Management, which is the sister company of Academy Securities. We focus in on a lot of fixed income, separately managed accounts, and we have the ETF. It's called VETS, and as Paul mentioned, it invests in residential mortgages to active duty service members, as well as small business loans to veterans. It's designed, though, the benefit here is it's designed. Yes, it's an impact strategy, but it provides market-based returns. So it's benchmarked against the Bloomberg MBS and the AG. And if you look at performance, we're very much in line with the benchmark, as well as any other similar strategies that that aren't necessarily impact related. So you get the benefit of the market-based returns, but while at the same time delivering impact. And really just kind of touching on that impact, one is the underlying assets in the ETF. So all of those loans, at the end of the day, as we grow in demand there, that will help lower the end costs to borrowers, being veterans and their families. The second component is the mission of Academy that Paul touched on briefly. Our mission is to mentor, hire, and train military veterans, pairing Wall Street veterans with military veterans, and we look at that as a 1+1 = 3, and it really, there's a lot of unique capabilities that are transferable skills from the military to the to the asset management. And at the end of the day, we've got a lot of smart folks that they want to come in and learn. And you think about making decisions with imperfect information, and Spider can attest to this. That's a key component of the military. But at the same time, as we as market practitioners, it's also really critical, because we don't know. We have to make a guess, and you can't be paralyzed paralyzed by analysis. You have to be able to make that decision. And so they really translate really well over to Wall Street. And then the third component on the ETF is we committed to donate a portion of the management fee at Academy to veteran and military related charities. We've partnered with the Bob Woodruff Foundation, and really excited about where we're at there. Just before I turn it over, back over to Spider, or to Paul, and then to Spider, the ETF is, we're in a unique spot. I mean, obviously, in a day like today, equities are having a tremendous day, huge risk on. We look at mortgage backs, and we think there's a value add to be added in the space. We've seen corporate spreads tighten in dramatically, and they're in the bottom decile in terms of where if you look at a longer run history over kind of a 10-year time horizon. And mortgage backs have not seen that same tightening, and so we think that there's some value there in terms of more, even if we continue on this positive environment. And then just if we do hit a downturn in economic, mortgages will outperform. So we really like the space, we like the impact, and we're happy with the performance. So happy to talk with folks. I think attached to the invite there's some more details. Happy to have conversations with folks. Please don't hesitate to reach out. My contact details are on there. And then at the end of there's also a QR code. If you like what you hear with Spider, which I'm pretty confident you will, scan that QR code, and we can add you to the distribution list. So with that, I'll turn it back to Paul.
Perfect. Thank you, Seth, and thanks for that. Thanks for that introduction. All right, now I would like to introduce our speaker, Major General Spider Marks. I'm going to read his bio here. Major General Spider Marks is head of the Geopolitical Strategy and Academy Securities Senior Advisory Board. General Marks is founder and president of the Marks Collaborative, an advisory for corporate leader development, education, and training, and has led entrepreneurial efforts primarily in research and national security. He served over 30 years in the Army, holding every command position from infantry platoon leader to commanding general, and was a senior intelligence officer in the LA riots, the Balkans, Korea, and Operation Iraqi Freedom. He culminated his career as the commanding general of the U.S. Army Intelligence Center and School at Fort Huachuca, Arizona. Hopefully I said that correctly.
Very close.
He has been awarded the Distinguished Service Medal, the Defense Superior Service Medal, Legion of Merit Oak Leaf Cluster, Bronze Star, and multiple combat and service ribbons. General Marks is a master parachutist, authorized to wear Korean and Canadian airborne wings, air assault qualified, and honored graduate of the United States Army Ranger School. General Marks is a national security contributor to CNN, as well as member of the Military Intelligence Hall of Fame. That's quite the resume. I would now like to introduce our speaker today, General Spider Marks. And last week we had talked about some of the different hotspots around the globe, and he has 20 to 25 minutes to summarize the entire globe. So good luck, and we enjoy listening to your perspective.
Well, Paul, thank you. Yeah, not a high bar to climb over. Thank you very much for the kind introduction, but most importantly, thanks for giving us some time and being great partners with Academy Securities. As Seth indicated who we are, as you've indicated who we are, it's mostly who we are. What we do is a derivative of that, but we've been very, very lucky, very fortunate, great vision on the part of our founders to create this investment bank and facilitate the transition of veterans as they complete their service to nation and they return to their communities and they raise a hand and say, look, I'm interested in getting into the financial space. And what you see on the screen with Seth and me is what we do. We've got a Wall Street veteran steeped in his profession, unmatched in his accomplishments. And then you marry that individual up with, that incredible talent and expertise up with a young veteran. And you say, okay, make good things happen. Don't break the law, follow the rules, and you've got all the right values that you want to have. In other words, we can train the financial skills because we hire the right values. We hire the right young men and women that want to make a difference and continue their lives going forward in a way where they can continue to contribute and give back. So, Paul, thank you very, very much. Obviously, on the heels of what happened last night, what happened this morning, I'm sure there are a ton of questions. Let me kind of jump right into it. I'm not a politician. I have a sense of what a Trump administration will do now moving forward. I don't know that immediately we're going to see significant, what I would call those key decisions that are going to impact immediately, but we could see some, but these are geopolitical, not economic issues, but they certainly will have economic impact. I think it'll be a little bit more of a longer horizon before we fully would realize that. But having said that, I think one of the first things we need to realize is that there are what I call 5 grand strategic issues, irrespective of this election outcome. But let's put it front and center. We got a new president coming in who was a president before. He's got a track record. I have no idea who he will bring on board in terms of his immediate advisors, in terms of the global impact, and realize that the global impact has 4 elements of power. It's diplomacy, it's information, it's military, and it's economic. Every nation and non-state actors have those 4 elements only, and then everything else derives from that in terms of applying and trying to affect behaviors, friends, partners, allies, those on the fence, and those you're trying to get rid of. But there are 5 strategic issues that I think we should talk about. And let me just go through them real quickly, and then we can dive into a little more detail as we go along, Paul, with some questions. Number 1 is what I would call a reset in China. China's got significant economic issues. They've got to correct that slide. Look, they've got a growth of 4.5%. And many would say that's great. Well, that's from 10% just about a year ago. So the direction is in the wrong direction for China. It's only going to go down from here. And it's how far it goes down and what Xi Jinping does to try to arrest that. It's not a collapse, but it's a slow slide in the wrong direction. The challenge that he has is he's got significant demographic issues. He's got some internal challenges, and primarily among those internal challenges, although I'll caution this, the Chinese over the course of about 3+ decades took about 600 million people from abject poverty to a middle class. So you've got a social contract with the Communist Party with about 600 million people who have the financial, intellectual, and physical mobility that a middle class would routinely demonstrate. And he's got to make sure that 600 million retain their interest, if you will, and don't get too excited about potential changes and challenges to the Communist Party in China. I don't see a challenge. And the issue with that 600 million is there is not an infrastructure, there's not an infrastructure where that 600 million can galvanize and bring together a voice that then provides a real strong, coherent challenge to the Communist Party. My point being, Communist Party right now remains sacrosanct. It has for the past, since 1949, when the PRC was founded, and since 1920, when the Communist Party in China was founded. So over 100 years, there's been some tremendous growth and incredible sacrifices on the part of the Chinese people, directed by the leadership of the party. So those are the stresses that exist within China. China, I think at this point, Xi Jinping in particular, is not interested in solving the problem with Taiwan by way of a military invasion. I don't think the time is right for that. He saw what happened to Russia when it failed the world's eyes were wide open to this failure of the Russian military in Ukraine. Xi Jinping is legitimately concerned about his military so that it doesn't repeat what Russia did in Ukraine. Excuse me. I think a military invasion in Taiwan is an entirely different military task for Xi Jinping. It would be amazingly costly. And ultimately, I don't think that that's the preferred course of action. Clearly, Xi has indicated that he wants to liberate Taiwan in his generation. But he can do that through economic means if he's sincere about it, or through a narrative or diplomatic means. The military remains one of his primary sources for conflict resolution. In this case, I don't think it's paramount. I think he'll probably be more patient. I hope I'm not wrong, but there are so many factors involved in an invasion against Taiwan, and primary among those is China has benefited, as I've indicated, over the course of many decades as a result of the world order. They don't want to blow it up. Many have said the Chinese are willing to bend it, but not break it. And I think that's very true. If he went to war in Taiwan, that would be World War III. The United States would get involved. I'm confident Japan would get involved. It would involve more than just the nations within Asia, but it would be a global conflict of significant importance. And the challenge we see with China right now is if Xi Jinping cannot correct the downward slide of his economy, one of his options is to change the narrative, and he conducts the invasion against Taiwan. His economy, nobody cares about his economy at that point, either internally or globally, but everybody would be focused in on trying to do some type of conflict resolution. It would be ghastly. So we, with a new administration, should not try to accelerate the collapse or decline of China's economic power. If we do, we could accelerate and end up with the absolutely wrong result, the nature of unintended consequences. So that's number one, reset in China. Number two, I'll be a bit more brief, my apologies, is the resilience in Russia. Russia fell on its face in Ukraine. The world imposed incredible sanctions against Russia. Russia has survived all of that. They figured out how to bend their pipes and sell their gas and oil in different directions. They figured out how to maintain a fight in Ukraine despite their enormous, unbelievable losses, anywhere from 300,000 to 600,000 dead. I mean, just marinate in that number for a second. It's phenomenal that they've been able to withstand that type of pressure and loss. I mean, Stalin taught us that one death is a tragedy. 1,000,000 deaths is a statistic. Well, this is a statistic. Nobody's paying attention to this. Russia is going to continue this fight, but they're not going to achieve an ultimate gain, the ultimate goal, which is to, drive to Kyiv and then chop off Ukraine for Russia. That's not going to happen. Ukraine has been incredibly successful, but Russia is resilient. So I think what we're going to see going forward with this administration is a nuanced response to this. Maybe what Russia has taken from Ukraine stays with Russia. Ukraine gets the frozen dollar reserves, Ukraine and the rest of the EU, to pay for the sins, if you will, the sins of Russia. And then that has to be monitored, it has to be sustained. And then what's different from what happened after 2014 and the usurpation of Crimea and the Donbass by Russia is what Russia has done has got to be normalized. I mean, those on the continent find this as almost an unbelievable possible outcome. But I don't know what it's going to look like going forward. Can NATO, can the EU continue to support Ukraine's efforts, which have been phenomenal? And where we are today is absolutely incredible. And as a result of NATO's support. So the world is behind what Ukraine is doing, but is that sustainable over the course of about the 3 to 5 years, which it would take for Ukraine to build up its military while it simultaneously fights a war? It's fighting a war right now. Can it build capacity so that it can dislocate and remove Russian forces from Ukraine? I'm not here to say they can't do it. I'm here to say it's going to take some time. Does NATO have the time? Does Ukraine have the time? Does Zelensky politically have the time? That's where we are right now. Russia, I think also, if what could be described as a resolution, or at least an outcome, maybe not a resolution, certainly not a solution that everybody will be happy with, But if there's an outcome and Russia then agrees to what that looks like, clearly there's incentive for Russia to continue what they're doing. Russia has demonstrated, at least its leader in Putin has demonstrated, that he can sign a contract and ignore that in a heartbeat. But if he signed up for a deal, we would anticipate that there would probably be an effort by Russia going forward, but the United States led effort to try to cease the fighting in Ukraine would at least give Ukraine time to get its act together, to reclaim itself as a sovereign nation with viability and economic growth and opportunity. Right now, it's a collapsed economy, obviously. It's got to get back to a place where it can realize its great glory and not be a threat to Russia. That's the very thin line that we're dancing on right now. But if we can achieve that, I'm here to tell you, I think all sins would be forgiven and the markets would open back up, sanctions would be lifted. The world doesn't want to punish the Russian people. We've got a challenge with its leadership, but we can't throw the baby out with the bathwater in this case. Historically, we have some very strong experiences in embracing those that created some incredible chaos, but we're able to turn the corner with them going forward. Maybe that's where we are right now. So that's number two. Number three is what I would call a ready or a recidivist India. We've got some real opportunities in India. I won't get into all the issues surrounding that, but look, 30% of their GDP spend is on the public spend. That means there is a great opportunity to do well and do good in India. India is a very tough infrastructure. Money kind of disappears. It gets sucked away. So you've got to very wisely and adroitly and cautiously be conservative about what those returns look like. But India is a non-aligned nation. It engages with everybody. It needs to engage with us in a more fulsome way so that we can be a part of their future moving forward, as opposed to distancing ourselves only because India has a relation. They're buying oil from Russia. India has a relationship with Russia. India has a relationship with China, troubled in many cases, but it does. We need to be able to figure out what within that non-aligned status we can benefit from. You put our national security imperative smack dab in the middle of the table, we get those surrounded and agreed to, and then we move forward in other directions. That obligation is ours. We can do that. The fourth thing is the rise of generative AI. I don't want to eat up a bunch of time on AI, but this is an opportunity that is phenomenal. We spend a ton of time talking about the dark downside of AI. I got that. But bear in mind, the human remains primary in the development of AI until we reach the point where AI develops the next AI, that's generative, develops the next AI, which develops the next AI, and all of a sudden we find ourselves at a lesser position in terms of influence. But bear in mind, we can always unplug that. We are on the loop. The human is either on the loop, in the loop, or out of the loop. It's our choice. The dark side of AI is that we're out of the loop. It's directing what we do, how we do it. We choose to be in the loop or on the loop. And AI has been around for over 3 decades. We know about it. We just haven't called it AI. But it had been around in practical forms. I use the example, everybody's been to Safeway. And when you go to that grocery store, it's got a barcode. You buy whatever you buy, that's AI telling you how much you owe for that 6-pack of beer. It's been around forever. The U.S. Postal Service sorts mail. That's AI. But we're in or we're on. We're not out of the loop in that regard. That is key in my mind. We will remain primary in the development of AI. We just need to be cautious of it. We don't need the government building huge walls that really provide the boundaries for AI. We've got to be able to realize that there is some great promise. And if the government gets in the middle of all that, we'll too narrowly define its great promise. And then everybody who has a bad idea, the out of the loop folks who are going to let AI go crazy, they're going to be on the outside of those walls. So let's create the boundaries. Let's discuss what those boundaries need to look like. And then the final thing is, and we're in the middle of it today, what I call the risk to republics. There have been a lot of discussion about the growth of the desire for, the collapse of democracy, the challenge of democracy, the growth of the autocratic strong man or woman to solve the problems that seem intractable today. The world is incredibly chaotic and uncertain. And as was described early on by Seth, and I appreciated it very much, what our gig, our political intelligence group tries to do is to sit down, Paul, with organizations like yours and your leadership and say, look, we're never going to completely blow away the uncertainty. The uncertainty is part of it's like breathing air. What we want to be able to do is to provide some insights within that uncertainty so you can see where are those opportunities, even though you're going to have to deal with that uncertainty. What we can't do is be paralyzed, again, as Seth said. We need to be able to move forward. Look, in the military, I used to make decisions all the time with what I would say was 60% clarity. But I couldn't wait for 70% because the enemy had a vote. If I waited for 70%, I would have been, as they say, shooting behind the target. I would have been late, would have missed the train, didn't get on the plane, didn't deliver the ordnance, couldn't make it happen, didn't capture that guy when he was there. I was waiting for the next piece of intel. By the time I got there, he was gone. We have to be able to feel confident that within this uncertainty, we can make decisions, and that's what we try to do. So this risk to republics is a legitimate dialogue, but it's not, I'm eternally optimistic about our republic. Our founders created this thing, which was an invitation to struggle. They acknowledged that there was going to be discourse and conversation and people yelling and screaming at each other. It has happened in our past. It will happen in our future. And we are incredibly resilient within this chaotic kind of structure. The concern I have is when you have unchecked leadership. America has checked leadership despite the discourse. And oh, by the way, historically, let's be frank, historically, republics have a shelf life of 250 years. We're at 248. Despite that, we're going to emerge from all of this. We are emerging. Our systems are working. People won't like the outcomes. Lean in and make the best of this. Continue to remember who you are and where we are. But we see countries around the globe where there are the strong man or woman that are going to be very challenging. I look at Turkey with Erdogan, NATO partner, who has threatened to invade Israel. NATO partner. How's that going to work out with the rest of NATO if he invades Israel? It's not going to happen. But my point is that's a very dangerous narrative. Orban in Hungary, very much a strong man, very much aligned with other autocrats of his ilk. NATO partner, very strong NATO partner. How is that working out? Meloni in Italy, a very strong woman, bending the rules a little bit. NATO partner. Marine Le Pen in France, she got kind of a slap in the face and didn't do very well in the last election. Many would say Modi in India, strong man. Well, he too was given a message from his people that said, no, we're not going to accept all of what you've done. You're still in charge, but you've got some reduced power within your government. We need to be very conscious of that. But America's going to be okay. So those are what I would call the 5 strategic issues: China, Russia, India, generative AI, and what I call the risk to republics. Everything cascades from that. So real quickly, if I can, let me jump into the Mideast. I think we're at what I would call the end of the beginning. What we see in the Mideast right now is not going away. It's not going to be resolved. What's unprecedented is you have 2 nations, Israel and Iran, that have chosen to engage in the exchange of missiles, to be openly hostile militarily against each other, not exclusively through the use or the application of proxies. The proxies are not going to go anywhere. They are tremendously limited and have been diluted in terms of their capacity based on what Israel has done. What we see will continue to happen. Israel's got an opportunity to set the table for a future that decreases the threat to the sovereignty of Israel by way of not eliminating, but decreasing the capacity of the proxies. We can talk about that. And again, I gave you insights about what I think is going to happen in Ukraine. And then also, I think a final thought, and the other key area, the thing to keep in mind about China and Taiwan. Oh, first of all, we all watched the Olympics, right, this past summer. Nobody saw Taiwan participate. What you saw was Chinese Taipei. The world's dialogue, the WTO, FIFA, World Health Organization, they don't talk about Taiwan, they talk about Chinese Taipei. And most of the world looks at this and says, this is a contrivance. I kind of don't get it. One country, 2 systems. What's that all about? This is crazy. Let's make this make it normal. It should be China, right? China knows that. And so their narrative really piles onto that. Yet government in Taiwan is very strong anti-China, but they're not an independent nation. They're not calling for independence. I think if they did call for independence, Xi Jinping, that would be kind of a red line for him. So the United States does not want the lay government in Taipei to suddenly have a referendum on independence, because it probably won't happen. Politically, it probably won't happen. The vote won't be there. But it's a very dangerous movement, I think. It really is kind of shooting China the bird when you don't have to do that. Because bear in mind, the number one trading partner with Taiwan is China, and it's phenomenal. And Taipei, Chinese Taipei, Taiwan is our 9th largest trading partner. We don't want to blow that up. We don't want to throw that away. Our interconnection globally is all about economics and finances. Political parties and political positions come and go, but we're an interconnected world economically, and we realize that. So we don't want to break that. And also bear in mind, anecdotally, above the president's desk in Taipei is a picture of a gentleman called Sun Yat-sen. Sun Yat-sen is the founder of modern China, 1905 timeframe. China, the Republic of China, Big China, was formed in 1912. Then the Communist Party came along in 20, and they fought for years and years until the Communist Party took over in 1949. And the nationalists ended up in Taiwan. But Sun Yat-sen is held in an incredibly honorific position. In Xi Jinping's office, in the hallways of the Communist Party, is a picture of Sun Yat-sen. In other words, that DNA lineage goes to the Communist Party, and it goes to the nationalists that now happen to reside in Taipei. That's a very strong connective tissue that I think is emblematic of what overrides the challenges between China and Taipei, Chinese Taipei, Taiwan, is that there is this historic connection that they both cling to and they both claim as the justification for who they are and what they do. So let me stop talking right there, but finish by saying we didn't talk about our relationship with Mexico going forward. Our relationship with Mexico is a one-issue relationship. It's called the border. We've got to get that squared away, what that immigration policy looks like. We don't have much of a voice in South America. Very troubling to me in Venezuela. We've got to be able to figure out how we kind of work our way in there. Strong relationship with Japan, strong relationship on the peninsula in Korea, increasing presence in South China Sea, especially our continued relationship with the Philippines, some challenges down there, obviously. But that's kind of a one over the globe. Paul, I hope I met your objective.
That was amazing. No, you definitely met it, and you went over the whole globe, very quickly. So I certainly appreciate that. We've had kind of some questions coming in. I'm going to try to kind of rehash the Ukraine Russia scenario that you just gave. So you think that there's a chance possibly that Russia keeps some of the land that they have taken from Ukraine. Ukraine gets the frozen Russian assets to help rebuild, and that may help kind of end that particular conflict?
I think so, Paul. That is the question. The way you framed it is kind of the essence of what we see between not just Russia and Ukraine, but in Ukraine manifested in the rest of the continent and NATO, the EU, our relationship, and others as well. I think that is a possible solution. I don't see that. First of all, when Russia took Crimea in 2014, the world didn't do a thing. It became accepted. It's now been in place for 10 years. I don't know, without being facetious, I don't know what the terms are for a common law marriage. After a certain number of years, it's legal. You've been living together, it's legal. Russia has owned Crimea for the last 10 years. In their mind, it's illegal. Russian flag flies there. Black Sea Fleet has always been there. They're not going to give that up. That was always an arrangement. Their fleet was there, but Ukraine owned it, So I don't see that going back. And the challenge is Zelensky has indicated that he wants all Russians off Ukrainian soil, which includes the Donbass and Crimea. I don't know how that happens unless NATO has forces on the ground in Ukraine led by the United States, engaging with, getting into a shooting war with Russia. We haven't done that before. I don't see that happening. So this is a very tough solution because it rewards the brutality and criminality of Putin. But I don't know how we reverse that. Certainly hanging all over all of this is the use of nuclear weapons. That ain't going to happen.
Okay.
Crime, the Ukrainians have given Putin ample reasons to use tactical nukes. They've outthought him. They've outmaneuvered him. They've out creatively engaged in combat against him. And Putin could have said, okay, our guys don't know what they're doing. Pop a nuke here, deny that terrain, and then we'll go fight someplace else. And we'll end up killing a few million folks. And the downstream effects will be horrible. Not for Russia in terms of radiation, but the rest of Europe.
A slight follow-up to that we've had some questions on is, the reports that we've seen are that there's troops from North Korea coming in to help Russia fight. Are we concerned at all that some of these new emerging alliances are going to come together? And what was it, maybe a couple of weeks ago, you had the summit, the BRICS summit in Russia, where many of these same kind of bad actors were all in one place. Is there any concern that they're going to band together more so than they have already?
Yeah, great question. Specifically on the application or the deployment of North Korean forces to Russia. That's all part of the deal that Kim and Putin signed in June of this past year, the mutual defense arrangement. And I'm not sure, I'm not sure what Kim's desired outcome is. These are not mercenary forces. I don't know that they're making a ton of money and going back to North Korea. I think these are like what I would call slave warriors. They're going to fight because Russia needs some help. I think it's a real opportunity. If Kim thinks he's going to get battle-hardened soldiers back to help train and imbue his forces with this combat experience, and then it propagates through the force and it makes his force that much more capable, I think he's wrong, because I think a lot of North Koreans are going to be slaughtered in this fight. I think if Zelensky could get this administration that still has a number 90 days left to unleash the long-range fires, they could go after those North Korean assembly areas before they get engaged. Forces just don't go straight into combat. They redeploy. They have to do what's called harmonization. They got to get used to that terrain. What's going on here? What's different? They have to do some train up. This is how we fight, et cetera. So they're in assembly areas. Go after the things. Kill them all. Don't know that that's going to happen. Don't know. So I think Kim might end up with a result that he doesn't really want, which is he's going to get a bunch of dead soldiers back, or they're just going to be lost forever. I think that's number one. I don't know, and you're asking a really good, much broader question is, do the BRICS now have an incentive to fall in behind? Now, remember, the BRICS is a loose economic arrangement, right?
Sure, of course.
It has. I don't know that there is no military alignment that takes place. However, it's a thin line to walk across if you wanted to have that. But seeing Chinese forces fighting with Russia is not going to happen. South Africa, who cares? Indian, nope, not aligned. Most of those, Brazil, nope, not going to happen. So I don't see that broader question suddenly manifests itself in a military response. But it has, over the course of the last 2 years, plus almost 3 years now, aligned itself economically and financially, right? So I think it's strengthened that. That's where you need to attack to find the weak point in those arrangements. And there are ways that we can do that asymmetrically. We, the world, can do that asymmetrically, again, with our partners.
One last question, I would say, around it seems as if the last retaliatory strike that Israel had on Iran, it hit military targets, left oil targets alone. Do you think if there was another retaliation that oil infrastructure would be in play?
Yeah, I think first of all, the Israelis have not said, that's it, we're out.
Right.
And that's a strategic, it's an operational decision on their part. They want the Iranians to realize that the next shoe has not dropped yet. They want them leaning forward to the point where they might start falling down. I mean, where they just get exhausted waiting for this next thing to happen. The Israelis are setting the tone of this engagement, this competition, as a result of their inactivity right now. It's pretty wise on their part. Oh yeah, I think the infrastructure that's in play is infrastructure that supports the military development of their drone capability, their military applications. Also bear in mind, nuclear R&D coexist. Those facilities, those smart guys exist and do their work on military bases. So you attack the military infrastructure going after the nuke R&D infrastructure. I do not think the Israelis will go after the nuclear enrichment capability. That certainly remains at play. And many would say take advantage of the weakened position that Iran is in right now. But going after deeply buried targets, which is where the enrichment facilities are located in both Natanz and Fordo, those two locations, the desired outcome is very difficult to measure and to affect. I mean, that's one of those things where you go, let's go attack them and take them off their stride. I don't know that we'll do that. I don't know that that'll happen. I mean, that's the discussion around the table. So if you can eliminate the tail, which is all the R&D, you can continue to decrease conventional military applications. It will have a negative effect, I think, in terms of its nuclearization of its military.
Okay. Okay. We're kind of bumping up on our time right now as I could sit here and ask you questions all day and we could go through every one of the different topics that you hit. So maybe we'll follow up with maybe an email or two if there's additional questions, but yeah, I want to say thank you for being on our call today. And I know that next week is Veterans Day. So I would personally like to say thank you for your service. And I know I'm certain there's other military veterans on the call today. So I want to say thank you for your service as well. Happy Veterans Day early. And I also feel like since this is an election year over the last, I don't know, several months, we've heard a lot of negativity about our leaders, about our country. If you could leave the participants on this call with just, something great about the United States or why you love the USA, I think that'd be great to end it for us.
Paul, that's just incredibly generous of you. Thank you very, very much. Very sincere comments. And I come from a military family. I'm the son of the soldier who was the son of a soldier. So 100+ years, there was a Marks man in uniform. The most, I would say the two most influential men in my life were my father and my father-in-law. One was severely wounded in Vietnam and World War II, and the other one was killed in Vietnam. So sacrifice is kind of a part of it. And we need to realize that I want everybody to realize that, or at least let me bring you into my world. The soldier's first duty is to remember who came before you, what did he and she do to make it so that you could show up and then you could be a part of this great journey called America. I mean, there's nothing like it in the world. Zero. Do we have our flaws? Heck yeah, we've got our flaws. Let's fix those goddamn things. Let's acknowledge them and fix them. Let's not yell and scream. The vitriol is way too much. We can solve problems and we can lean forward, work locally, solve those problems here, but embrace what this incredible nation has been able to afford us so that we're not at the edge of an abyss. I understand history pretty well. We've got a lot of work to continue to do, and I'm confident that we're nowhere near the abyss. America is unlike, I vote on America. I'm looking at the growth of autocratic nations, those resource-rich nations. I got it. Okay. All those strong men and women, I got it. You think it's tough being an autocrat. Let me tell you, because I guarantee you one thing, you're going to screw it up. And historically they do. They do. So the first duty of every soldier is to remember. I'd offer everybody, please remember what we're all about and what we are trying to achieve so that we do not, it's all about reputation. We do not ignore those folks that came before us, and then we make it better for those coming behind us. When I left home and I went to West Point, my father left me with one comment. All it was, okay, bud, remember who had your last name first. Don't screw it up.
Very good. I like it. But General Marks, I certainly appreciate the time today. Seth, I appreciate your time as well. And Suzanne, it's been great. Thank you for helping us organize everything. And to all the participants on the call, I'm sure if there's a question that we didn't get to, that you can email me. I'll certainly take it and see if we can't get it answered for you. So with everyone,
Thanks,
I
Paul.
appreciate it.
And just a reminder to the folks on the attachment, there is a QR code if folks like with what General Marks had to offer. We have 30 admirals and generals on the team, and they all have unique insight. We publish when something unique happens around the world. We publish a sit rep, and then publish a monthly piece that's more broad. And so if folks are interested, take a look at the QR code, and you can sign up and you'll have access to these materials.
Excellent.
Thank you, Seth.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you, Paul.
Thanks, Paul.
Absolutely.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Suzanne.
Bye-bye.